Anyway, now I think we're down to the official time for this class. So let me hand out the official handout. And I'll tell you what's going on here. Or just pass a pile of them around. Anyway, so this is CNIT 125. Unlike most of my other classes, this is not a hands-on technology class. The point of this is to get the CISSP certification, or at least prepare for it. You will probably, most of you, not really want to get the CISSP right away. But if you do, that's fine. If not, you want to be ready for it later. You will need it if you want to have any kind of information career in information security. It is expected. It's the union card of this business. And the thing that makes the penetration testers and hackers of the world very, very irritated is that the CISSP is expected by everybody, and it is not a hands-on cert at all. It is less technical than Certified Ethical Hacker, which people mostly laugh at. It is not about doing work at all. It's about being the manager, having other people do the work. So the manager, like Dilbert's pointy-haired boss, never touches anything or does any work, but hopefully, unlike Dilbert's pointy-haired boss, he actually understands what the people below him are doing, or her. And anyway, so here's the point. You're going to learn that CISSP is a mile wide and an inch deep. I'll put it by a door for the latecomers. Anyway, so you learn a lot of terms and you know basically what they mean, but you don't really know how to do anything, because you're not expected to be installing stuff and fixing it and making it work. You're expected to be making strategic decisions like, should we go with this product or that product? And so you need to know basically what they do and what their competitors are, and then get your technical staff to recommend things. And you should know enough to know if they're totally incompetent or not. And that's about it. So we'll talk about security risk management, business continuity, cryptography in general terms, investigations, a little bit of the law, and how to maintain security of operations and telecommunications. And this test is greatly feared by MBAs. MBAs learn about management, and then they decide to become CSOs, Chief Security Officers, and they have to get a CISSP certification, and they are very, very afraid because you have to know A+, Net+, and Security+. You need to know hardware, networking, and basic security, and they have to learn all 3 classes worth of stuff to pass this test. But you guys, hopefully in our IT program here, already have A+, Net+, and Security+. So all you have to learn is a little management, which is about 1/4 of it. So that's why it's practical to do it at this college. People, when I first started thinking about this, people said, oh, CISSP is too difficult. You can't possibly teach it in one class at the community college level. Well, I can, because this is really the 4th class. You've been doing 3 other classes that teach most of it already. Anyway, and I've had quite a few students get the certificate after doing this. It works. So I got a book. The test was recently supposedly updated. The previous updates seemed to actually change nothing, and I don't imagine this one really changed much anyway. But anyway, this is the appropriate textbook for the updated version. And so I've got an online Canvas platform that we use around here. You've got online multiple choice open book quizzes every week after the first couple of weeks that you take a quiz on the lecture, on the chapter before we have a lecture on the chapter, which I switched to about a year ago on the advice of a student, and it was good advice. You do not need to attend class physically at all. You can observe a live stream on the internet. This is the recording studio, as you can see, and this stuff is being live streamed for anybody that wants to see it. And it's also going to appear on YouTube about a week after each class. And if you don't want to wait that week, you can go to my old classes page and get the videos I recorded last semester. So I already have videos of all these lectures online. So you can just watch those if you like. All right. After today, I'll have Kahoot quizzes for extra credit in class, which are just a way to keep people from falling asleep. And if you want to participate in the Kahoots, you cannot ever do it with the City College live stream, because as Stuart pointed out to me last semester, the City College live stream is delayed by about a minute, which I imagine is so they can bleep out the swear words, because this is actually being broadcast on television in San Francisco. So they have to bleep out the swear words. But it means you can never win the contest. So if you do want to play the Kahoot game, use Zoom. Zoom is real-time networking, and I turn it on during the Kahoot so you have a fair chance. So here we are. Today I have a very simple agenda. I'm just going to talk about introduction to CISSP and how the class works, and then I will ask them to stop recording. We'll go around for introductions and you meet each other because you need to form groups. Yeah?
I had a problem with Kahoots. As
Yeah.
I started it and stopped after the Kahoot was over, I had a hard time sometimes I couldn't get back on.
Well, all right. Well, let me know.
So once you start it, you need to keep it on and
okay.
And maybe take off the live stream because it echoes and it's off. It's in, it's out of sync.
Oh, yeah, you might want to turn off the City College live stream while you're doing this.
Stay on the other one.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I wouldn't try 2 live streams.
I lost it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it back on until after it was halfway through.
Well, that's a good thing to know. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it because I never know what the viewers are seeing. Anyway, so this is the first class. I have a brief description of what this class is like so you can decide whether you really want to do it. And then I'll ask them to stop recording. We'll go around the room, have introductions so you meet each other because you have to have teams. This is the structure of the class I like here. You form teams. You have managers of each team, and you have tasks every week that come from your managers. You're going to each do different projects. Now, some of you might really want to get the CISSP right away. And if you do, I would recommend you just get the Transcender practice test and your project every week will you do those practice test questions. And forget about any hands-on stuff because it's not going to help you pass the exam. However, most of you probably don't really want to take the exam after you find out how much it sucks. You probably just want to get the general information and the exam itself is not going to be the immediate value to you. You'll just be ready for taking it later in your career. And so you might want to do a hands-on thing. And past students have done projects like setting up honeypots and catching malware, designing radio man-in-the-middle devices, various other things like that. Any of those things are fine. Or doing capture the flag competitions. Yeah.
With a lot of the search exams, I've heard that the failure rate goes up drastically the longer you wait after you complete a class.
I would imagine, yes. If you really want to pass the exam, you should do it right after you take the class. What you should do is finish the class and then spend a couple of weeks studying the practice test until you're getting 100% on all 3 practice tests, and then you'll be ready. So that is the way. If you really want the cert, like your boss has told you, you have to have the cert by a certain date so they can get a military contract or something, which is pretty common, then focus on that and forget about anything else. And they're doing it right after class is best. But I think most students here probably not really going to want to take the cert after I talk about it. Anyway, so after this class, there's quizzes due. First couple of quizzes aren't really due until a couple of weeks later because people might still be adding. But anyway, I recommend doing it here. So you take the quiz before the chapters. Next week, we will start the usual procedure, which is I'll lecture for about an hour. And then we will have managers who will present their pitches. So some of you should decide you want to be managers. And next week, come here ready to present a pitch and see if you can convince anyone to join your group. And then, from that point on, your managers will assign you tasks starting that week. The managers, every student should know what they're doing. That is my primary goal. So in a normal class, you have homework, and I put it on my webpage and everybody does the same homework, but that's not really appropriate here. You'll be doing different projects. Sometimes my students have done security audits of the college or other places. Sometimes there's a lot of different things you can do. So managers, think of what you might want to do. Think if you want to be a manager and lead people in some direction, and then we'll form teams, and every week the managers will have a specific task given to each person, and they'll be able to know if you did it or not. And you get points depending on whether you actually did your task. Anyway, so, and that's the game. There'll be, I think, 9 or 10 of those tasks throughout the semester. And one thing that will happen is at this college, about half of the students are very distracted by turmoil in their life, or they aren't very committed or something, and they just vanish after a few weeks. So you'll start with a group of 6, and by the 4th week, you'll have 3 people, and another 3 have vanished. So you'll tell them what to do. They don't respond. Every team member has to communicate with their manager at least every week, one way or another. It is possible for them to do this all electronically. You can have meetings by Skype or chat rooms or whatever you want, but they have to somehow email, whatever works for you. You have to somehow communicate with your manager so you know what you're supposed to do, and then somehow communicate with your manager so the manager knows whether you did it. That's how you get your points. If the manager flakes out or can't make it, they have to appoint some substitute manager to show up, or they're going to lose their points. So that's the game here. Yeah.
Well, but you don't know your task. You don't know how to do it.
Well, if you don't know how, then you should be able to ask for help. That's why you have a group. But that's good. And certainly, just like a real job, if you ask people to do something and they try but they can't do it, you typically don't fire them for that. Instead, you give them some help or something. Yeah.
Can you give some examples of the tasks that we might have to complete?
Yeah. Well, the ones that come to mind are the ones I said. You can just focus on practice tests. You could just focus on reviewing the material. I had students who, for several weeks, going through all the OWASP top 10. You could do some kind of hands-on thing if you want to. Anything related to security is fine. I think I've even got some people that do like sort of English type essays about cybercrime and policy and stuff. I've had several people write policy statements because they're interested in pushing into management. So they've written policy statements, non-disclosure agreements, things like that. There's a chair back there if you want it, a couple of them. I wouldn't stand up through this. Anyway, so, all right, that's good. I'm glad you're bringing it up. So let me talk about the CISSP cert. So this is the grading. I should mention how the grading works. Here's the first day handout. Here's the policy, the grading policy. It's very simple. There's quizzes, and there's the tasks that come through your group. Each person has to do 2 presentations, 5-minute presentations up here. It's very important that you learn to communicate. That is probably the most important thing in many ways. The trick here is that you have to learn not only to communicate to technical people, you have to learn how to communicate to managers who are not technical. This is super valuable. If you can explain what you're doing to a non-technical person, you will go very far. And if you cannot, you will not go far at all. You'll be constantly just stuck at the bottom of the pyramid because the managers are not technical. And one thing you have to do is get over hating them for that, which most technical people start out with nothing but contempt for stupid managers that don't know my technical stuff. But the point is, they hired you because they don't know that technical stuff. They hired you to do that. And what they want you to do is do your complicated technical stuff, and when they ask you what you have done, to explain it to them in terms they can understand. Now, when I was a technical guy, I did not feel like that was my job. They would say, how much is it going to cost, and how long will it take? And I said, I don't know anything about that. And they said, well, that's what I need to know. I said, well, I don't feel like I should be asked these absurd questions, but you have to get over that. The fact is, they're driving the ship. They don't care about the complicated doodads of your little bits and code and stuff. That's your job. They care about what will it do, how long will it take, how much will it cost, or should I do this other thing instead? That's what they're doing. So you do have to be able to boil down your complicated gobbledygook into a 5-minute explanation to management that makes sense. And if you can do that respectfully, you will go very far. That's why I remember at DEF CON they said, what's the difference between a hacker and a hacker in a suit? And the answer is $100,000. So if you hate management and see them as a necessary evil, you will cripple your career. What you have, something my sister told me, teaches at Catholic school, is you cannot influence someone unless you respect them. And of course, I did this the typical way, which I don't really recommend for you. I started out as the typical nerd that hated management and saw them as just irritating things just to ruin my life. And the only thing that made me feel better was to get old enough to be management, which is why most kids, I was also a kid that said, I'll never be like my father. And of course, I'm just like my father. But what I hadn't anticipated is by the time I turned into my father, I don't care about it just like my father didn't care either. So it isn't bothering me as much as I expected it to turn into my father. But anyway, if you can overcome that barrier faster, you will go further. If you can actually respect managers, then it's okay for them not to be technical. Anyway, so that's the game. All these things add up to a bunch of points, and you have an A, B, C, D, and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, you said the A+, Net+, and Security+, they're not like prerequisites for, the knowledge of that is not prerequisite for passing the security test, is it?
It is not, well, you'll find it. We're going to summarize all that stuff in this class.
But A+ is like, swapping hard drives out.
It is, and there's a chapter or 2 on hardware. There's a couple chapters on hardware, a couple chapters on network protocols, a couple chapters on basic security and hacking concepts, and then a few chapters on management. And that was the only part I found hard. The rest of it is all A+, Net+, and Security+. So hopefully you already know pretty much that stuff. If you don't, we're going to go through it pretty fast. Management was really hard for me to learn. It was baffling, confusing, because I never worked at a corporation. I don't know what all those levels of hierarchy are and what they do. I thought they were all just a bunch of idiots. and often they are, but you have to learn how it's supposed to be. And anyway, all right, so and I also have the obligatory cheating statement. If people are cheating, I can kick them out and all that jazz. So that's what you're getting into if you take this class. So everything is on my website. Like I say, you do not need to physically attend a class, although some people do. It's all right here at samsclass.info. This 125 has everything. And among other things, it has the slides for all the lectures, and I'm going to go through the first one here, which is already open here. So this is a short one for today, because this is what it just explains what's going on. So here's the goals. we're going to cover everything you need to pass the CISSP exam. Although, of course, well, I'll talk more about how you should properly prepare for it. One class does not prepare you entirely for the exam. It prepares you as much as any other cert prep class, which is 3/4 of what you need. But you have to go through all the materials twice to pass the cert test. I always go through 2 whole books, or you go through 1 whole book and then a whole practice test or something. So you have to go through it all twice to have reasonable confidence you're going to pass the exam. Then we're going to have groups and group projects. You'll be doing tasks, and each of you has to give 2 presentations. All right, so certifications are here. As you know, there used to be a time 20, 30 years ago when you would go to college and get a college degree, and this actually prepared you for a job, and people respected it and cared about it. And that is changed in strange ways. I mean, I've watched in the last 20 years as college gets more and more expensive and less valuable, and yet demand for it goes up and up. So I'm sort of baffled because the actual content of the courses is more and more worthless, and yet people want them more and more. And I'm interested in any theories. My current theory is that the value of a college degree is that it shows that you are willing to take a lot of stupid orders from an idiot and obey them. And actually finish something, whether it makes sense or not. And that is an extremely valuable job skill. That means we can trust you to stay on target, obey, like a military training. Now, you will do what you're told, shut up, stay in line, and that's pretty important on the job. Anyway, but since the colleges cannot keep up with the rapid pace of technology, and they don't offer the degrees you need for technical fields, the companies themselves have started making certifications like Cisco and Microsoft, and independent agencies have appeared to do it, and that's what ISC² is. They're a vendor-neutral security certification body, and the one they make that matters more than anything else is CISSP. I know a man with 25 certifications, and his business card just says CISSP, because he says that's the only one anyone cares about. You have to have it, you have to maintain it, and it will open a lot of doors for you. And there are a lot of ridiculous salary numbers showing that CISSPs typically start at 80 grand and more. Of course, as you're going to see, beginners don't usually get the CISSP, and that's why I say many of you at the beginning of your career may not want to take this test yet. But anyway, you do need to have this thing before you can go too far in information security, although there are, of course, a few shops that just hate all this, pay no attention, we don't want to see your stinky certificates or college degrees, we want to see your kills as hacking into something or something. But most people are on board with this. So yeah, here's one of the many charts showing people making ridiculous piles of money with the CISSP, like in San Diego, over 100 grand and so on. All right, so this is one of the certifications recognized by the U.S. military. The U.S. military has a certain set of security certifications you have to have if you're going to handle information. And if you're going to be any kind of IT tech handling computers that have classified information on them, the CISSP is one of the ones. There's several they respect there. So it is globally recognized. And here's what you're required to have. 5 years of experience, full-time experience in one of the 8 domains. And by the way, this is not as hard to have as you might think. For example, if you have been a security guard at the mall, that counts. Physical security is one of the 8 domains. So if you have any kind of ex-military or anything, it counts. So I mean, anyway, but you do have to have 5 years of experience or 4 years of experience and another thing like a CompTIA cert or a bachelor's degree or something. The exam costs $600. It's 6 hours long, 250 multiple choice questions. And not only is it very long and very tedious, it is also written in a way that will just make you cry. Other certification exams like Security Plus and Net Plus and A Plus are fair. They have a question, they have 4 or 5 answers, and one of them is right and the others are wrong. The CISSP exam is not like that at all. You have a question which doesn't really make much sense, and you have 5 answers which make even less sense. And you are supposed to figure out which one is the least stupid choice. And people first thought this is because managers wrote it and they don't know anything, but it never changed year after year. So I think it is deliberately written that way to simulate the experience of being a manager, where you don't really know what's going on and you have to choose the right course anyway. Anyway, you really need a practice test to get used to the bizarre questions. So you also have to obey the code of ethics. Anyway, so if you don't have 5 years of experience, and you take the test and pass it, you become an associate of ISC². This is a junior CISSP. It will not impress your employer as much as CISSP will, but it means you can now become a CISSP by just accumulating experience. You have 6 years to do that. So, all right, so this is the thing to get. This is something some of you might want to do. Pass the test and not have the experience, then you have time to accumulate the experience. This is what I had to do because being a teacher does not count. as full-time speakers. So I only got in by appealing up to human judgment and convincing them that developing new courses count, and they let me in. But it took me 6 years to do that. All right, now you can also get halfway up. You may know if you take Cisco, there's a CCNA and there's a halfway up called a CCENT. There's a halfway up to CISSP called SSCP. And by the way, there's another thing that is practically halfway up to a CISSP called the CISA, which Richard Wu should be offering here soon, which is the auditor. And I took the practice exam for that and passed without studying anything because it's all in the CISSP. It's about half of CISSP. But those also will get you good jobs. Anyway, all right, and then a code of ethics you have to obey, and this is part of why everybody wants you to have this, because it's like a law degree or a medical degree or psychiatric license to practice. It requires you to obey certain ethical rules, and you can lose it for ethical lapses, in theory. Although in practice, this seems not to work out very well, which I think is also true of the other ones. But here's the 4 canons. You protect society, the commonwealth, and infrastructure. You act honorably, justly, and legally. Provide diligent service, and advance and protect the profession. The first one means you shouldn't be an anonymous rebel trying to tear down the military-industrial complex, because the whole point of CISSPs is to hold up the military-industrial complex. You get this in order to join a corporation, in order to work at some place like a bank or the military or a security or an insurance company and hold up the existing structure. If you want to tear it down, you're in the wrong class. You should be in like a anonymous forum or something. But anyway, then this is just the same thing everyone else has. You obey the law. This is the ethics. Some people have a complicated concept of ethics, that ethics is improving the world and giving people spiritual meaning in their life and all that jazz. Well, that's complicated stuff. I don't go there. That's religion. This is very simple business ethics. You obey the law and you give people good value. If they hire you for a job, you do a good job. If they ask you to do something you're not competent to do, you don't take the job. You say, well, you're going to have to hire somebody else. Just reasonable business ethics. That's what we're talking about here. You don't rip people off or lie to people. By the way, another thing not mentioned explicitly here, but absolutely necessary, is keeping secrets. Just like lawyers and doctors, your security consultants have to sign non-disclosure agreements, and you have to keep your mouth shut. This is why Snowden is now in Russia, and his lawyer, after he got to Russia, his lawyer went out and said, I have some advice for my client, which is never come home. Mary Anna Chapman, stay in Russia, have a good life. But never come back, because I don't want the job of trying to save you if you come back here, because he absolutely had military secrets, he absolutely signed a non-disclosure agreement, he absolutely dumped it, and then admitted it. He said, I don't know what you think I'm going to do to save you, kid. You're toast. Stay in Russia. Anyway, so this is diligent and competent service is more of the same, and you are expected to contribute some of your time to help other people. You're supposed to go to conferences, give talks, help train junior people in. There's supposed to be a sort of a fraternity or club of people in this business that help the new people in and help guide them. So yeah, that's why when you turn in your professional education, CPE credits every year, they have to be something above what you get paid for. So I can't get CPEs for teaching these classes. I get CPEs for teaching extra free classes at conferences or something. You have to do something beyond your job that advances the profession in order to hold your certification. Or you just have to keep retaking the test every 3 years. When I waited in line to take the test, I asked, and a bunch of people do that, which is not my idea of a fun time, but they actually just take the test every 3 years. Anyway, so like I say, the exam is sort of nuts. This class alone is not enough, but of course the same thing's true of a Microsoft class or a Cisco class or anything else. If you take the class and then go take the test, you're not enormously likely to pass, because the class alone is not enough. You have to go through the material twice. So go through a whole material from 2 different points of view. I often go through 2 whole textbooks. In this place, what I recommend is the whole class followed by the Transcender Practice Exam, which will cost something like $150, and it is well worth it. The cert's going to cost $600, and you really don't want to flunk it and have to take it again. And the Transcender, if you practice the way they tell you to, until you are getting 100% on all the practice tests, then it's easy. That's what I did. And I had no problem. The entire exam of like 300 questions, there were only 10 that I wasn't absolutely certain about. So it was easy to pass the exam because I had properly practiced. So it's not impossible, but you do have to prepare for it. Yeah?
Is it exam adaptive?
No. It is old-fashioned to the max. When I did it, it was on paper and a Scantron form, and we had to wait a month for them to run the Scantron through. Everything about the CISSP is designed to frustrate and irritate you as much as possible. It appears to be deliberate, to simulate the worst experience of being in a corporation with layers of management above you just telling you to do stuff for no apparent reason. To see if you're ready for life in corporate America, which is what it's for. So it's a management exam, not a technical exam. The questions are very strangely worded, vague and confusing, very often using what appears to be the wrong terms for things. There was a practice exam I think I took which really baffled me. It said you want to send a message to a client and you want to make sure that the confidentiality is maintained. So should you send it through unencrypted email or through a fax? And I'm like, and I'm really baffled by this question. And the answer, they say, is you have to use unencrypted email because the fax will sit on a public fax machine and somebody walking by might grab it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want this. I hate my life. And so there was another one, I tell you, you know your Net Plus, that said you have a network with 55,000 computers on it. You want to network them all in one LAN. So what private address range should you use? 10.x, 172.16, or 192.168? And I'm like, well, in the first place, you should never do that. That's completely insane. 55,000 machines on a LAN, it will just freeze up and not work, so I hate my life already. But if you're going to do that, you obviously use 172.16, which is Class B intended for that, and the answer that they say is correct is 192.168, because there are 65,000 of them, 192.168.0, 192.168.1, so if you supernet 192.168 to /16, you've used up the right number of numbers, and I'm like, oh, this is what someone would do who has no idea what they're talking about. Yeah. But these are practice tests, so they were not the transgender practice tests either, which are better than that. But anyway, it's that sort of very disturbing stuff. Anyway, so that's the game. There's blogs about how to get used to these crazy questions, and the main thing is to have a proper practice test. This is the explanation of it from Dilbert. I've seen a lot of management type talks like this where you just make it impossible to understand anything people say and then you try to hope they'll assume you're smart. Let us say next week we'll have managers making presentations. People who are really inclined to pass this test at the end of the semester should form a group, buy the transgender thing, share it among themselves, and do nothing but practice those things. That would be the right way to go. This is the one I recommend. I did the 30-day online access. I did it in 1 week. I saved a link on my page explaining exactly how I prepared. I went through a textbook like yours twice teaching the class, and then I just spent a week. I was going to spend 2 weeks, but at the end of 1 week I was getting 100% on all the tests, so I took the thing and it was fine. But however long it takes you, practice until you're getting 100% on all those things, and then you'll be fine. If you try to cut corners, you're taking a chance of not passing the crazy thing, and I don't think it's enough fun that I want to do it twice. So anyway,
did you download it or did you have that by the access?
I got the online access just to make it cheaper because I only wanted it for one. I only wanted it once. Yeah.
So I think it's in April or May of this year, right? They come out the new. Is it going to change much the material?
It never seems to change much, okay. But I certainly would get the right version of the test. And the CISSP update was about 2 years ago, so I'm sure they have a transgender that's the right version now. If it was the previous version, it wouldn't really matter realistically. I think the only big difference is now there's a few like drag and drop questions instead of all being multiple choice. But it's really not too bad.